talk today. I'm Jennifer Bennett. I'm your outreach coordinator here at the Capitol Museum, and it's my pleasure to welcome Fred Honorkamp, our speaker today, who has been Santa for 20 years. He is a graduate of the Charles W. Howard Santa School, and he's also a lecturer there, so we're going to get to hear about that whole experience. I'm very excited about that. He's a member of the Michigan Professional Santa Association and a resident Santa at the Midland Santa House. Anybody been to the Midland Santa House? It's magical, right? It's amazing. At least to make it magical outside, too. In his non-Santa life, he has served in the U.S. Army, decorated 8 times, including the Soldier's Medal, the Air Medal for 75 such combat missions, and the Purple Heart. He worked for Corning for 31 years in marketing and retired as Global Supply Chain Manager for packaging worldwide. And then, as if he hasn't already done enough, he also taught marketing and strategic management at Northwood for 10 years, including guest professorships in Europe and Asia, and retired as chair of the marketing department. So let us welcome Fred. We're very excited you're here to tell us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jennifer. I'm going to start off with a little bit of a slide presentation, and it's just to put everybody in the mood. We're going to show you a little bit about the Santa House. You're going to see some students from the Santa School. You'll see I took 50 Santas to Israel to visit the only Santa in Israel, in Jerusalem, a trip sponsored by the Israeli government. So you're going to see a bunch of Santas floating in the Dead Sea, and that you can't swim in the Dead Sea. You just pop up. And when you lay on your back, by the way, and you're floating there like a beached whale, you need a friend to help stand you up, because you can't even stand up. It is that salty, but it was a neat experience. Some of the Santas were baptized in the River Jordan. And if your phone goes off, that's a $10 fine payable to me. So let's start the video, and we'll put everybody in the mood. And we have the most famous reindeer of all, Olive. Olive, the other reindeer. I'm sorry, I had to do it. Well, I hope that puts everybody in the mood. I want to tell you a little bit about the Santa House in Midland, the Santa School, and a little history about Santa, and then what it's like to be a Santa. So if you can just sit back, relax, and let's learn about Santa. The Santa School started in 1934. Charles W. Howard, who was a Macy's Santa, was so upset with the way Santas were looking, because they had thin suits and cigars and beer breath, and he was Macy's Santa. But other organizations, back then, all the Santas were associated with a business. And he went to those businesses and said, listen, don't you think that a poor-looking Santa is going to reflect on your goods, Mr. Gimble? And he was right. And so he started a Santa School. By the way, Charles W. Howard is the technical advisor for the movie Miracle on 34th Street. And he started this school, and at first it was modest. It started in 1937, and then he moved it to Albion, New York, upstate New York, and ran the school for a number of years. In 1960, when he was beyond the age of where he could do anything anymore, couldn't run the school, and he wanted to pass on the school to one of his best students, who was Nate Doan of Bay City. A wonderful man. And Nate moved to Bay City in 1968 from Albion, New York. He taught in Albion for 8 years and then moved it to Bay City. And when Nate was getting too old to do it anymore, he moved it to his best friend and student, Tom Valent. And that was 1987, was moved to Midland. Now the Santa House itself, as you can see, was beautiful. It was built in 1987 by Gerace Construction and a bunch of foundations in Midland. And the glockenspiel was added in 1997, and I think it was 2003 or 4, we added a separate back building with bathrooms for the little ones, which is, thank God for that. Your pants get soggy at times. And you might ask yourself, what can you possibly learn in 3 days at a Santa school? I mean, that's a long time. And most people were just putting on a suit. In fact, just the other day, I got a call from a person that wanted to have me come to to Alma, to an event, and I was booked. I've been booked since August. And he wanted me to come there, and I couldn't because I had 2 events that day. And he said, well, I know most Santas have 2 suits. Can I borrow one of yours? I said, no. My suits are $4,000. Most Santas have between $4,000 and $6,000 outfits, and we all have 2 of them. The suit itself, just the pants and the coat, are $900 to $1,000. I'm getting a new cape, which is $1,300. The boots are $700. The belt's $100. The belt buckle's $80. My keys are $80. These bells, I had the Amish make, but these normally cost $100. The Amish gave them to me for $60. But they're real, they have that real Santa sound to them, don't they? And you have all the other equipment, like your Santa bag and some of the other Santa things that you have. My beard is a theatrical wig that's human hair, and that's $2,000. So it isn't for the faint of heart. Most of my work is philanthropic, but I do get some paying gigs to help offset the costs. Just to get the wig set is $85 a perm, and we have 2 of them, and they don't last the whole season. You get out and I've done a number of Santa parades in Gladwin and Sugar Springs, and I'm doing Shop with the Heroes coming up with a bunch of kids in Beaverton, and your hair will get, as you ladies know, in the wind and the rain, your hair gets messed up, and you have to have it done again, so it's another 85 bucks. But we're not into it for the money. We're really not. Most of my work is philanthropic. I will be at, well, for example, Kiwanis in Midland does an event at Floyd School where Floyd School is 70% of the kids are impoverished, below the poverty line. And so what we do with the help of their parents is they will buy a present for the child, a clothing present. You know what most of them want? Pajamas. They don't even have pajamas. And so Santa will come and visit and give each child a present. And I always say, I love you. Santa loves you very much when I give the present. And I can't tell you the number of teachers that have come up later and said, do you realize that's the first time in months that child's heard, I love you? So it's a labor of love for me, but I do have to pay some bills, so I take some of the... So what do you learn in the Santa school? I mean, it's 3 days. Well, first of all, you learn Santa lore. You know, it dates back to St. Nicholas. And let me get the exact date, because I know it was a Thursday, I think, 2080 AD. And St. Nicholas was a bishop in Muir, which is part of Turkey right now. And he was a wealthy man, and it was he believed in the gospel of giving away to the poor, which he did frequently. He was known for his generosity. And the story goes that there was one family with 3 daughters, and they were very poor. And because the daughters did not have a dowry, they couldn't be married for their whole life if they didn't have a dowry. And so he came by one Christmas Eve, and he threw a bag of gold coins through the window, and the story is that some of them landed by their shoes, which were drying by the fireplace, and stockings which were hung to dry. And there becomes the tradition of hanging a stocking by the fireplace. You just thought I was another pretty face. You didn't know that I knew all that stuff, did you? But what else do you learn? You learn history. You learn about reindeer. Kids will ask everything. So you have to be on your toes. For example, did you know that reindeer can run between 37 and 50 miles an hour? They're the only deer family member that is domesticated or can be domesticated. And they, unfortunately, this year, we've lost maybe 10,000 reindeer because of climate change. The reindeer eat lichen, which is a moss that grows right under the snow, and they will dig with their hooves through the snow, eat the lichen. Well, sadly, freeze, thaw, the lichen's now under ice, and they're starving to death. I'm going to grab a little thing of water. So, the farmers in Norway and Denmark and Greenland have been bringing out bales of hay to keep their stock alive. Did you know that if you see a reindeer today, like the one I was holding, if it's in December, that reindeer is a girl. The males lose their antlers in September. So Santa, except for Rudolph, of course, because he's kind of special, Santa's pulled around by girl, which is kind of neat. You learn about how to dress, makeup. We have singing lessons. We even have a lesson on Saturday how to say ho, ho, ho. You say, wait a minute, that sounds pretty stupid. Well, if you come in with a big voice and go, ho, 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 you're going to scare the bejesus out of the little people. And so it's more, for Santa, it's more of a laugh. Rather than a shouting in your face, ho, ho, ho. You learn how to handle a deaf child. We have sign language lessons. How to handle a blind child. How to handle a child with autism, attention deficit syndromes. You learn how to handle difficult questions. For example, I've gotten all of these but one. Santa, can you make mommy's cancer go away? Santa, can you make mommy and daddy not fight anymore? Santa, can you find us a home? Santa, can you help us sell our home? Santa, can you find daddy a job? Santa, can you make sure that Uncle Ed doesn't get in bed with me anymore? You know, so there's that whole side. Now, how do I handle a child whose mom has cancer? And I get that every year, 2 or 3, sadly. I'll say that only God can make cancer go away. Santa makes toys. He doesn't make miracles. So what I'd like to do right now is get on the ground, and I get out of the chair and I kneel down and I say, let's say a prayer for your mommy right now. And then I have a little book, a little tiny one. I said, let's write your name, your mom's name in this book. And every night, Mrs. Claus and I will say a prayer for her. Learn how to answer difficult questions like, Santa, can I have the Nintendo 4000? And the parents are going, you know, they're somewhat threadbare, and the Nintendo 4000, $600. So I'll say, have you ever been to the North Pole? They'll say, no. It's very cold up there. You go out of the main, and the snow is just up to here. And you know, it's so cold, the snow is blue. And then you can see the northern lights, and you try and make it come alive to them. You go down this path to Building 4. And in Building 4, I have a little elf named Rupert. And Rupert's making the Nintendo 4000s. But guess what? What, Santa? Every time I go in there, he's playing with them. We're way behind production. I don't know what we're going to do. If you don't get one, don't blame me, blame Rupert. So you throw Rupert under the bus. It's to set up an expectation in the child's mind they may not get the Nintendo 4000. They'll ask for right now they're asking for iPhones. And I said, not doing iPhones anymore. Why not, Santa? Well, last year I gave an iPhone to a little girl, and in January, Mrs. Claus got a $3,000 phone bill. We're not doing phones anymore. If you get a phone, it's from your parents. And they'll ask for an outrageous, I want an elephant. I said, in 1938 I did an elephant, and right over Germany, he pooped over all the presents. I had to land in France and clean him up for an hour. We're not doing elephants anymore. So, and it's stuff that they can appreciate. They'll ask for a puppy or a kitten. And we never promise anything, especially an animal, a pet. And I'll say, for example, have you ever been to the North Pole? No, Santa. Well, when I leave, I put the puppies by my left foot in the sleigh, and I put the kittens in my right foot, because you can't put them together. They'll fight. And when I get down here, because I don't have too many, I tend to give them to little boys and girls that have nobody to love them. Maybe they lost a mommy or a daddy. And if I have an extra one, I'll bring it to your house. But if I run out, it's because somebody needed it more. Is that okay? And they always say, okay. So again, you're building in the expectation that something may be given and may not be given. You get all walks of life. In Midland, you'll get a kid comes in with a spreadsheet 4 columns wide. If you can't do it at the North Pole, here's where you can get it, and here's the prices, and they'll ask for outrageous things. Right now, the big outrageous present is the 3D printer. And they'll want, for example, an iPhone or the latest big game machine that are $400 to $500. But then the other day I had a little guy in, and there's kids that are packed like cement. He didn't look fat, but when I picked him up, I could hear the vertebrae in my back snapping. Put him on my knee, and he was just full of vim and vigor and life. And I said, what can I get you for Christmas? He said, all I want's a pair of shoes. And I said, I think we can do that. What else could I get you? He said, Santa, if you can just get me a pair of sneakers that don't hurt my feet, that's all I want. You get children that are handicapped. I had a little guy in 2 years ago that was, all like this, and he was in a laid-out wheelchair kind of. His father brought him in, and he was nonverbal. And so I always get out of the chair, and I'll kneel down next to him. I tell him all about the North Pole, all the presents we're making, and the smell of sawdust in the air, and all the neat cookie smells that we get from the kitchen from Mrs. Claus. We kind of make it come alive to him. I tell him everything I can about the North Pole, the northern lights, and the reindeer. But then there's a big line. Midland Santa House, before COVID, was getting 30,000 visitors a year. And that includes the 2 weeks after Christmas when it's open. Santa isn't there, but you can still visit the house. So we get a lot of visitors, and the line builds up. And I had to move on. I said, I'll see you Christmas Eve. And I go to get up, and he goes, wow! He grabbed my arm. And his father said, Johnny, Santa's got to see some other children. And he says, I'm so sorry, Santa. Johnny watches a Christmas music, a Santa music video every day. And this is his one chance to see the real Santa. So I'm right back down. And I try and give it a little bit more. And I wanted to make this the best visit he ever had. I read in the paper that 3 days later he passed away. So you have the good, the bad, and it's to see the pure joy on a child's face is all the reward you need. It's just heartwarming. Then there's the 12-year-old that comes in. What's my name? First thing I'll do is say to my helper, we have a little boy doesn't know his name. And he'll go, I know my name, but do you know my name? And I said, yes, I do. Your name's Gerbish. He said, no, my name's Bobby. No, that's your English name. We go by Elf, and your elf name is Gerbish. Then they'll come back and say, okay, where do I live? You live at 5708. He says, no, I live at 363 Grosvenor Street. That's your street address. We go by roof addresses. And your roof address is 5708. So you have to be on your toes. Have to remember this is the most precious possession a parent has, and they've entrusted that person with you. And you have to take it extremely seriously. For the guy that just wanted to borrow my suit, he doesn't have any of this background. He doesn't have any of the training and techniques that we use to make it special. He's just a guy in a suit, which is exactly what Charles W. Howard didn't want. His motto was, you err if you think Santa comes through the chimney. He enters through the heart. The Santa School itself gets visitors from around the world. Our Santas are the Macy Santa in New York, the Santa at the Kennedy Center Honors, the Santa at the Rockettes show in New York City, Santas at Disney World, Disneyland, Mrs. Clauses that we've trained are at both those places. The USO Santas are all graduates from our school. The Santas that you see on television every night when you watch an ad, 90% of them are graduates from the Charles W. Howard Santa School. So it's really a neat thing to be able to do that. Let me tell you about the trip to Israel. We get Santas from around the world. Scandinavia and Israel. Our Jerusalem Santa came back for a visit. And he invited me and Tom Valent to go to Israel and bring some Santas with us. Tom, unfortunately, Holly was sick and could not go. So I led the group. We had groups from 5 different nations, Canada, United States, Germany, Scandinavia, Norway, and Sweden. And there were 50 of us. We got over there, and the director of tourism greeted us at the airport. They had chartered buses for us. They paid for every entrance fee. They had police escorts. We got up to our starting point. They put us in a Santa train, like the one they have in Midland, and we pulled out of the old gate, and here were 400 reporters greeting us. It was amazing. I was on the front page of Pravda, the Russian newspaper, Paris newspapers, London's, all over the world, but not Midland, Michigan. They never picked up the story for some reason. In fact, Reuters went to my hotel room to go through the steps it takes to become a Santa. For example, you don't know that we have to put on makeup. We put on foundation. And why? Because if you don't, when they take a picture, you'll get a flashback on the brightness of your face. And then you put a little bit of rouge on your nose and your cheeks because Santa's an outdoorsman and needs to look a little ruddy. But you don't put so much on that you look like a clown. You just put a little bit on. So anyway, we had a wonderful time. Some of our Santas were baptized in the River Jordan. I showed you that one picture with me with the dog. The Midland Humane Society was having a difficult time, and they had a volunteer professional photographer, and we photographed 20 or 25 dogs and cats that were up for adoption and nobody was picking them up. And then they put that on their website, and you saw one of those pictures, and every single animal was adopted. So it's really neat. I've been babbling on now forever. Does anybody have any questions?
How old is the oldest person you ever had come to Santa?
Last year I had a woman that was in her 80s, and she came and said that, Santa, I'm on hospice. I'm not going to live more than the next 30 days. And my family and I would like to have a picture with Santa as our last Christmas. I've had babies as young as 2 days old. And whenever I get a baby, I'll put them on my lap and you grab both hands because they're beard pullers. And then I'll reassure the parents by saying, I haven't dropped a baby in 10 minutes. And he bounced, so I'm sure this is going to go well. You know? I don't like doing the children screaming picture that parents want. I'll never want to terrorize a poor little child. We want every visit to be a wonderful, loving experience. Any other questions? No, it has changed. It has by necessity. We get physical training. We get voice training. Why physical training? Last night at the Santa house, I saw probably 300 children. Each time I pick up a child and put him on my lap, there's 50 pounds of dead weight, sometimes a lot more. So it's physically demanding. And you have to, I know I don't chaw too many cookies, but I got on the scale this morning and said, would one of you please get off? But we have accounting now. Santa's run in 3 different categories. The casual Santa for family and friends, the what I'll call semi-professional, kind of where I fit, where you do a lot of charitable work. Like, for example, I'm auction items on several different auctions. A couple of years ago, I was at Blessed Sacrament and it was auctioned off. Home visit from Santa. It went for $2,000. Now, I don't get the $2,000. The church does, or the school. but it's a neat way to give back to the community. This year I was St. Bridget's School again, and Snow Snake Ski Patrol auction item. But anyway, you learn at this middle group, I'll call, the semi-professionals, you learn how to pay for your expenses and yet do a lot of good work. Then there's the professionals. And the professional Santas are, some of them can make $100,000 in the month of December. They're flown to Bermuda and Bahamas by executives. They're in commercials. They take it very, very seriously. Now, they need marketing. They need an agent. They need, their gear is top-of-the-line gear that is, $8,000 to $10,000 in suits. So you address all three of those. We have accounting, because you have to be able to, if you're getting paid even a little bit, you have to be able to give back to the government, and you have to keep track of your expenses as well as your funds coming in. We have, again, classes on sign language, and we also, and that's tough, I'll be honest with you. Some of the guys are really good at it, I'm not. If you don't use it, you lose it. So I can say Merry Christmas and a few things like that, but you can't, when doing that, that just means I'm having a spasm. You learn how to, again, sing with your diaphragm, not with your voice, and speak with your diaphragm, not your voice. Because if you're talking to as many as 600 people in a night, your voice is going to go pretty quickly. So you learn how to take care of yourself. We have a legal aspect, training on the legal aspects of being Santa. I carry $1 million rider. Why? I've never done anything wrong. I don't want to ever do anything wrong. But I do have the possibility, as a child slips, you go to grab them, and there's somebody with a camera that's going to see your left hand's on their leg. So you have to protect yourself. I wanted to show you something that, well, first of all, this is what I think Scott's getting this year. And it looks like coal, and the kids believe it's coal, but it's actually a piece of silicon metal, so it doesn't get my hands all dirty. And I can show them. Sometimes often I'll get a little girl comes in. And sometimes it's really bad. They'll say, Santa, all I want is a friend. But many times it's, Santa, can you please give my presents to somebody that doesn't get any presents? And we call those the givers. And what I do with a giver is I'll say, oh, Santa loves you, and I have a special present for a giver. And I'll reach in my pocket and I'll say, hold out your hand. And then I'll put this in their hand and cover it up. What it is Rudolph's baby bell. And I'll say, it's the only one I have. Don't tell the other kids, because I don't have one for them. But this is what I want you to remember, always be a giver. Every now and then, I'm invited to these tree lighting ceremonies. Let me just stick on these gloves down here. And they're wonderful events, but you freeze, so you need some gloves. Talk among yourselves while Anyway, I'll say to the kids, we need Santa's spirit. How many believe? I believe. that isn't Santa's spirit. I believe it. And then by the fourth or fifth one, they're really yelling, I believe. And I'll say, I think we can get a little bit of the North Star dust. Ah, we did. Oh, that's hot. Let me throw it over there. And then I said, it's too hot to hold. Let's throw it at the tree. And then the tree lights up. Santa has some tricks, but Santa isn't tricky. I wish you all a very, very Merry Christmas. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.